Welcome back to another episode of Them Football Guys. It's your host, Aloha Baba Yaga. We're on to part two, the running back edition of week 8, start and sit. Let's get right into this. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure y'all like and subscribe. Make sure y'all leave a comment. Hit that notification bell. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Make us one of your sources. We on Apple Music and Spotify. We everywhere you need us. Let's get right into this for real this time. Let's start off with the Cardinals-Dolphins game. And by the way, I've said this before, there's no buys this week. Week 8, there is no buys. So we have a lot of games to cover. I will be running through these to get y'all this information as fast as possible. Let's start with the running backs of the Cardinals. We have James Conner as a start. Trey Benson is a sit. Jeff Wilson is a sit. Jeff Wilson plays for the Dolphins, but Trey Benson is a sit. We get it. Not Isaac Guerrero. What's that other one's name? DeMarcado, also a sit. We get it. We're ready to, bring in the rookie. We think James Conner's getting goal, but Trey Benson's not getting any work. And when he does get work, it's something small here and there, nothing worth the start. James Conner is the star running back in that offense, and he will remain the star running back in that offense until the Cardinals either trade him or decide to tank and move him off to somewhere else. Then as far as the Dolphins go, we have Devon Achane as the start. Raheem Mostert is questionable. And I think at this point we're teetering that point where whether Mostert plays or not, he's probably at best a flex, not really worth forcing in your lineup. And Jeff Wilson isn't even a thought whether or not Mostert plays. So note that. Let's move it on to the Patriots and the Jets at Patriots. Still part of the 1 o'clock window. We have Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. Breece Hall is a start. You already know what that is. He proved himself last week. We started getting worried about him a couple weeks ago, whether all the Jets running backs were falling off. Braylon Allen, on the other hand, is a sit. And yes, we love Braylon Allen. He's talented, has a workhorse build. But at the end of the day, it's still Breece Hall's backfield. There is enough work to be divvied up, but it's not being divvied up right now. Breece Hall is the star of this offense, and it shows. He was the only producing factor of their last game. So keep Breece Hall in there. Keep trucking with him. Temper yourselves with Braylon Allen. And then we have Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. Ramondre, we had talks a while back. Ramondre is losing his job. Gibson's going to be the starter. Ramondre scored that game. He looked great. He looks explosive. He looks quick. He looks shifty. The fumbling issue, hopefully he doesn't fumble and lose his job. But overall, we like Ramondre. Gibson, the opportunities weren't, abundant enough for us to say put Gibson in your starting lineup. So I'm sitting Gibson, starting Ramondre. Moving on to the Eagles at Bengals, still part of the 1 o'clock window. It's like I do this every time I bring it up, but we start off with the Eagles at Bengals. We have Saquon Barkley, Zach Moss, and Chase Brown. So I'm going to start this one backwards. Zach Moss and Chase Brown are both starts. I honestly think Chase Brown is a better start than Zach Moss. Chase Brown had out-touched Zach Moss in the last couple of games. Kind of working him out as the de facto starter, but they're still splitting it evenly enough that Zach Moss still has fantasy viability as a deep flex. So both of them are starts. As far as the Eagles go, Saquon Barkley is a start. He's actually, as far as I'm concerned, the best start of any running back you could have. Probably the best value you could have had from the draft. Number one running back in the league right now, and he looks great with the Eagles and the Eagles offense, better than he ever did with the Giants, and that's saying a lot. As far as Kenneth Gainwell, he's not on the list. That tells you all you need to know. Moving on to the next game, we have the Packers at Jaguars. Josh Jacobs also been very explosive in this new offense. The Packers offense has so many weapons that they leave enough room for Jacobs to do what he needs to do, including some passing work. We love Josh Jacobs. He has no real competition in this offense. Moving on to the Jaguars, Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby has been splitting the work beautifully. Both Etienne and Bigsby are starters this week. Bigsby still a flex. You got him late. Etienne, we expect most of the work to go through you and run through you. Emmanuel Wilson. I yeah, you know why he plays for the Packers. You know why he's there. They're not really giving him any actual work. I don't believe he's a flex in any regard, but he is the good change of pace. He does get a couple carries, about 7 or 8 per game, and maybe he'll find the end zone. We have Falcons at Buccaneers, another 1 o'clock game. Bijan Robinson, automatic start. He's been finally looking like the back we thought we drafted. Yeah, it's looking great. Tyler Algier, on the other hand, is going to be a sit, and not a knock on Tyler Algier's talent, because we've had this talk about the mishandling of Tyler Algier. And I honestly think that if I was Dallas, completely unrelated, I'd be calling the Falcons right now, like, give me Algier. But they don't want to move Algier because they love him as a handcuff. He's a high value handcuff in the league. So Tyler Algier remains a sit because the workload hasn't increased for him, even though we see that he is capable of being a 1-2 punch with Bijan. Moving on to the Buccaneers, Rachaad White and Bucky Irving are both starts. Bucky Irving being the flex. We know that Rachaad White is probably going to see a uptake in receiving work with all the wide receivers being out for the Buccaneers. And Bucky Irving already had an increase in work, and we like seeing him. He's a lot more explosive than Rachaad White. He's a better back than Rachaad White, except Rachaad White is pretty good at catching the ball. So Rachaad White should see an increase in the passing work. Bucky Irving should see an increase in the groundwork, because they should keep the ball on the ground a lot more than they were before. And then there's one more back for the Bucks, but it's okay if I don't mention him. What's his name? Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker is the third back. I don't think there's any team that has 3 backs worth starting at once. So I hope that answers your question. Ravens, Browns, still part of the 1 o'clock window. We have 2 more 1 o'clock games after this. We have Derrick Henry, who I actually think is the number 1 back in the league right now. Him with that Ravens offense, automatic start every week. No mistakes, no accidents. Start him. We have here Justice Hill, and I'm on the fence with starting Justice Hill even as a flex, because if he doesn't find that end zone, he does get a lot of receiving work. He gets the majority of the receiving work, and I like the receiving work for him. But am I sold that he's worth flexing? Because I flexed him 2 weeks ago. I didn't like it. I didn't flex him last week. He did decent enough. But yeah, that's the point of a flex. You never know if you're going to get the 5 or you're going to get the 10. So Justice Hill's a good flex. As far as the Browns go, you have to start Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb not being on this list is criminal. Gator, you're slipping. Nick Chubb is a start. You start him every week. We waited this long. You don't keep the king waiting. The king versus the king at this point. Dante Foreman, Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford, bum ass, is finally an official sit. Dante Foreman is also a sit. Easy peasy. We have Colts at Texans. Joe Mixon, another aged running back that seems to have rose out from the ashes this year. Mind you, Joe Mixon has had good years, but he's having a phenomenal year with the Texans right now, despite the injuries. And he's literally made 3 other running backs obsolete by himself. Ogunbowale, Damian Pierce, and Cam Akers, obsolete. Jonathan Taylor, if he plays this week, he's a start. He's been out for the last 3 weeks, I believe. So if he gets a chance to run against this Texans defense, I think you take that opportunity. As far as like not Trey Benson, there's Goodson and there's one other one for the Colts. They don't matter. The other one didn't matter, and Goodson was probably the only one that could have mattered, but you also want to put him on the bench this week. And there he goes. Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson, I believe his name is. For the Titans and the Lions, we have Tony Pollard as a start. I don't believe Tajay Spears plays, and even if Tajay plays this week, I have Tajay Spears as a sit. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the ultimate 1-2 punch. They're both starts for us. We keep them in the lineup. We keep them moving. Easy. No sits for this game for real. Just typos. We moving on to the 4 o'clock window. We start with the 4:05 game. Saints at Chargers. J.K. Dobbins is a start. Gus Edwards is still injured. And not Blake Corum. What is this one's name? Kamani Vidal is also a sit. Alvin Kamara has been slipping, but he is still a start this week, especially against this Chargers. What's his name? Kondre Miller, if he's even healthy, is a sit. So, yeah. Moving on to the 4:25, Bills at Seahawks. We have James Cook as a start. We have, what's his name? Ray Davis as a sit. Ty Johnson also is a sit. Kenneth Walker is a start. Charbonnet, we love you, but you are a sit. They've finally figured out how to split the workload in Seattle, where there is a primary back, and Kenneth Walker is the primary back. So Kenneth Walker is a start. James Cook's a start. Sharp's a sit. Ty Johnson's a sit, and Ray Davis is a sit. And if you had to start somebody else out of the two, I think Charbonnet is probably your better option between the two. No, I think Ray Davis is actually the better option between the three. We have the game where one of America's games this week, Bears at Commanders. We have DeAndre Swift, who's had over 20 points for the last 3 games. Started off single digits for the first 3, so we're seeing a lot of good work. And the Commanders defense, while seeing a big improvement, essentially might still be essentially succumb to Swift, because what's his name? Chuba Hubbard had a good game against the Commanders, despite the fact that the team was still blown out 40-12, I believe. Brian Robinson, great work, looks healthy, looks good out there. Austin Eckler, perfect handcuff, great flex if you got him. Roschon Johnson is a sit, despite the fact that he does see a good amount of the receiving work, and I do expect him to see a good amount of receiving work here. I'd have him as a sit flex if I can make one alteration to this, because I do feel like he can, in fact, produce at least 8 to 10 points if you need it. So I'd have Roschon as a sit flex. Moving on to the Panthers at Broncos, still a 4:25 game. We have Javonte Williams and Chuba Hubbard as our starts. Miles Sanders, McLaughlin, Esteem, all sits. Jonathan Brooks is still out. He's probably going. He's teetering, missing the first 10 games of the season. No word on the return time for him. So Chuba Hubbard, he's all green. Javonte Williams, who had the best game of the season so far last week, all green. Chiefs at Raiders. We have Kareem Hunt. The reunion of Kareem Hunt and the Chiefs have looked beautiful. He had 2 touchdowns last week, about 70 to 80 yards. I think it was about 60 to 70 yards, actually. Alexander Madison, the usurper, he's a flex at best. Zamir White is a sit, lost his job. Carson Steele is a sit, never had a chance. Samaje Perine is a flex, but I have him as a sit simply because it's not really worth it. But I do have him as a flex sit rather than a start flex like Madison. Moving on to the Cowboys versus the 49ers. We have Rico Dowdle. We have Rico Dowdle as a flex. It's going to be a rough game for him, so he's a flex. Like, if you have another option, pick another option. And we have Jordan Mason, who, to be honest, is also a flex. Jordan Mason hasn't had the best game, but Dallas's run defense has been trash. It's literally the worst part of their offense right now, so Jordan Mason might have that game that we've been waiting for simply because he's playing Dallas. And if he does not, Jordan Mason is going to be relegated to a sit flex next week for me, regardless of who he plays. Or I guess that's a start flex, not a sit flex, but yeah. Now on to Monday Night Football. We got Najee Harris, who I've decided does better when Jaylen Warren's healthy, whether or not Jaylen Warren impacts the game. Najee Harris has his better games when Jaylen Warren is playing. So Najee Harris is a start. Jaylen Warren is a sit. Cordell Patterson, who's been injured, is also a sit. Devin Singletary is a start. Tyrone Tracy's a sit, even though last game I believe they split carries almost evenly. Last game was a terrible game for both teams, and I don't think this game's going to be much better. So Singletary is at best a flex, and Tyrone Tracy's a sit for sure. So that concludes this episode of Them Football Guys Start Sit Week 8. Hope y'all have the best luck with this week. Ask us some questions. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. Make us one of your sources. We on Apple Music and Spotify. What was the last thing? Oh, like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Hit the notification bell. Them Football Guys, we love you, and we are out of here.